Samy Burch, you wrote the screenplay for May December about a marriage that started years earlier as this tabloid scandal. And you said the character of Joe, who was underage when the relationship began, was of particular interest to you. How challenging was it to delve into such an unusual life experience and mindset as a writer?
Well, I mean, I felt really connected to the character of Joe right from the beginning. That kind of was the seed. And it's difficult subject matter. It's really sensitive subject matter, but I, character is sort of the anchor for me when I'm telling a story. So, I had to feel like I understood him right from the beginning to even want to write the story.
And it's this is sort of similar to the Mary Kay Letourneau case. How much research or prep work went into writing this, or how much did you want it to kind of hew to the real story, and how much did you want this to be its own fictional story?
Well, I mean, I grew up in the 90s also. Oh my God. And all of these tabloid stories really were so in the water. I feel like I don't remember learning them. It was always, Mary Kay Letourneau, OJ, Tanya, Heidi Fleiss, these figures were so prevalent that I really didn't do any research at all. Right from the very beginning, that was the sort of the seed and the jumping off point, but it was important to me that this was a fictionalized version, that any of the detail, it was really no research. It was just kind of jumping off there, a couple like that, and feeling, a way that it made sense to me that, these people kind of forming independently, of how I could see that happening.
And the story is told through the point of view of Natalie Portman's character, an actress who is going to turn this into a movie. Um, what made you choose that as sort of the entry point into this story?
Well, I mean, we always knew we wanted it to be a set 20-year. I mean, that was like the initial spark, was like, okay, we're 24 years, 25 years later from this scandal, when their youngest kids are about to graduate high school, and this idea of being an empty nester in your mid 30s, young enough to start over, that kind of that idea, always setting it right before graduation, and then having our entry point be this like TV actress, with something to prove. Like it felt inherently comedic, as well as also very helpful, that she's filling this kind of investigative reporter role. So that the story is very fragmented. We're kind of learning as we go, and we get to see all these different lenses as she talks to people, almost like a detective kind of thing.
And you mentioned the humor of the film. It's a very funny film at times, and how do you balance that kind of the intensity of the subject matter sometimes, and with also the kind of sort of comedy that comes into it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, a lot of the balance has to do with what the jokes are, or what the root of what the punchlines are, who's at stake. I think a lot of the humor is, because we're coming in with this actress, there's elements that are maybe more acerbic about Hollywood, about this true crime machine, that we're part of taking these 90s stories and retelling them. And some of it is coming from a place of it being so uncomfortable and so dark that there needs to be some release, but the character of Joe, and what happened to him, I mean, that's very protected. He sort of exists in the safe space within the story. And that was obviously very intentional. So it's about calibrating, I think, that balance.
And it's directed by Todd Haynes. How did he come on board the film, and what was it like working with him on it?
Amazing. I mean, it was a crazy journey, really, but the first producers were Jessica Elbaum and Will Ferrell, who are wonderful, and they got it to Natalie Portman. And so she said, I want to play this part. And then she sent it to Todd Haynes, which was surreal, as you can imagine. And he is just, I mean, as a person, a lot, I mean, I love his work. It's meant so much to me, just as a fan of film. And then he's amazing. He's as smart and kind and funny as you could ever hope someone to be, and getting notes from him are like poetry. And there's so much generosity of spirit, and he's also just so thoughtful and bold. It's really cool to see that up close. It's very exciting.
There's a particularly memorable moment in the film where Natalie Portman recites this letter that Gracie wrote to Joe back during their early relationship. What was it like writing that and really kind of digging into Gracie's point of view with that?
Yeah, I mean, I like I like writing a monologue. I mean, it really there's a nice amount of space, or canvas on the page, but that moment is it's so key. There's like a climactic element that kind of parades all three of their stories, because I feel like, not only is it sort of Natalie's performance, or Elizabeth's performance as Gracie, as this actress, you kind of get the sense that this is her hitting the high, this is her flying a little too close to the sun, as Gracie. But yeah, we get finally some amount of evidence of the truth of Gracie's point of view at the time, like this relic, this clue. And we learn not only how dishonest she's been about some of the things, we have confirmation, but also you see the portrait of a very disturbed person, which is not necessarily a surprise, but it's like almost you can see a fracture in the mirror, a mirror crack, where you can kind of start to see it more up close. But I think the way Todd shot that straight to camera, and especially when you see it in the theater, I always get that sense, like, that we are Joe in the past. We are Charles Melton's character as a young boy. Like, the amount of pressure that's being put onto us in that monologue is so it's so disturbing. So yeah, it's kind of keeping all those things in mind, you know.
Previously in your career, you've worked in casting. Does that influence how you write at all? Like, do you imagine actors in the roles as you're writing, or knowing that they might be played by someone else in the casting process, or how does that work?
I was the thing that honestly I think has impacted my writing the most was when I was a casting assistant and I was the person making the audition sides. And there were so many day players or the people, that had one line that really didn't need to be in there. And so that's a way where I think there's, like, it's practical, but I try to make sure that every role really has a reason for being there, even if it's small. Some of my favorite line readings in this movie are day players with one line that just kind of come in and say something funny. But that's really the main thing, I think.
Well, congratulations on your work on this film, and thank you so much for talking with me about it.
Thank you.